We're about to bank over the Atlantic. As Meinkewitz spoke, the plane angled downward. Beeps sounded, and Jose hurried into the cabin. Please buckle your seatbelts. What's going on here? Sir, we have a bad engine landing north of Santa Clara. Meinkewitz looked at Patch as Jose headed up front. The green landscape flashed into view like a rolling conveyor belt. The outside engine sputtered and smoke flared behind the plane. They passed over rugged terrain and several large bodies of water as they circled. The plane swept over the jagged shoreline of a large body of water, pitched slightly toward a landing strip within the foliage. It hit the asphalt hard and rocked to a stop several hundred yards down the runway. Jose returned a few minutes later. Both Meinkewitz and Patch stood in the aisle. Come with me. Well, what happens now? Asked Meinkewitz. A jeep is being sent for you until we fix or replace the engine. We cannot travel to Cairo. You have a friend on the ground, senor. Patch nodded. Interesting. Several dozen troops in brilliant green uniforms surrounded a gray Toyota Jeep positioned at the bottom of the ramp. White exhaust spewed away from the soldiers. A scruffy sergeant stood up in the Jeep. Senor Kincaid, Senor Meinkewitz, usted vendrá conmigo. Meinkewitz motioned Patch inside. Patch climbed over the passenger door and Meinkewitz slipped him back. The Jeep engine whined as they raced away from the plane. The sergeant straightened the wheel down the runway and then veered onto an exit road through the trees. He said something in Spanish, and Meinkewitz turned to Patch. There's a valise under the seat with high-altitude photos of the area. Patch dragged out the brown leather case. He unzipped the top and pulled out photos of a reservoir, a large lake similar to what they had seen before they had landed. Meinkewitz stuck his head over Patch's shoulder and said something in Spanish to the driver. The sergeant spoke with one hand along a long, undulating green stretch. Meinkewitz spoke again in Spanish to the driver, and then he turned back to Patch. Carlos? Yes, Carlos has been sent to relax after the battle. He's been in the cabins near the dike. He's been fishing in the reservoir. The sergeant says he has weapons for us. Again, Meinkewitz spoke to the driver. He won't tell us, but he says we risk soldiers following us up here. Patch looked over his shoulder toward the airport. The Jeep swung into a thicker forested area. A sign arrow for Santa Clara pointed east. As he checked the photos, he noticed handwritten initials in the lower corner of each photo taken from a high altitude. These are U-2 photos, Ray, and they were supervised by Colonel Robert G. Kincaid. His initials are on each photo. Then Korbinski had the equations, but the plain fact is your father has just provided you with the means to kill Carlos Sánchez and change everything. I don't believe in Korbinski anymore. The sergeant shifted down and headed south. The U-2 photos placed the upper edge of the reservoir only a few miles to the south. The highway forked at a wall road that traced the upper edge of the reservoir in a second area beyond a cluster of small buildings. The driver yelled something in Spanish into the air, and Meinkewitz leaned back to Patch. He's dropping us in the woods outside the reservoir. Then he'll give us weapons. As they moved closer to the reservoir, Patch set the U-2 photos on his lap. Don't ask him yet, what the hell are we supposed to do once we're successful here? I doubt our benefactor is going to fly us to Coconut Grove. No, let me ask him. Meinkewitz leaned toward the sergeant and spoke to him. The sergeant's face became animated, and he moved his arms back and forth. Meinkewitz nodded and grabbed the U-2 pictures. He set them next to Patch and then leaned forward again. Okay, thank you, said Meinkewitz, looking at the photos. So we meet Our Lady of Hope Church and Father Hernandez. He'll get us on a fishing boat and we'll be brought several miles out at Cayo Cornuco. They'll get us to Key West. The sergeant produced a nervous laugh and said something else. He says the plane will take off and hopefully the army will not be after us. Amen to that. The brilliant blue reservoir, visible through the trees, alerted Patch that Carlos Sánchez lurked nearby. The sergeant swung the Jeep off the road to the edge of the woods. He jumped from the Jeep and went back around Meinkewitz and followed Patch onto the road's shoulder. The sergeant held 2 Soviet SKS carbines. He threw one to Meinkewitz and the other to Patch. Then he removed the shells from the box. Would have been better with fully automatic weapons, said Patch. Beggars can't be choosers. Now I know why they dressed us in fatigues. At least we'll have the element of surprise. One shot will kill him. Agreed. sergeant threw back the packs to Patch. Patch handed one of the packs to Meinkewitz, and the sergeant shook their hands. He said something in Spanish and rounded the Jeep and hopped inside. The engine started and the exhaust swirled through the clean air as he looped back to the road. Patch turned to Meinkewitz as the Jeep left the area. The stillness ate at his frayed emotions. He told us he wanted God to be with us. If Carlos doesn't die, he will live into the future and probably destroy everything. I know this. Meinkewitz held out the photos and tilted them away from the sun's glare. Less than a half a mile from the cabins, Patch. Patch pulled out a small pair of binoculars from his pack. And we have no idea where he is. I don't think there are too many people out here, Ray. He loaded the shell clip into the rifle and held his sight up to the sky. He's a dead man, Ray.
What a disaster the Bay of Pigs was early into the Kennedy administration. The CIA clearly tried to bully JFK to get involved with air power, but JFK took responsibility anyway. Even the landing site was changed to a less advantageous area, and then the CIA came down on JFK forever. In the midst of it all, brigade members are killed or captured, and Patch is behind the enemy lines, having saved Carlos inadvertently. He and Meinkewitz are in the sports stadium as the prisoners are paraded in their yellow shirts as Castro rants over the open mic. When they finally are cut a break on the way to the Soviet Union, Patch sets his sights once again on Carlos Sánchez. I'm Robert P. Fitton. Be there next Saturday night for the conclusion of the Kennedy Paradox. Rock and roll! All of my books are available in paperback, Kindle, and audio at www.fittonbooks.com, or you can look at the list of audiobooks separately at pizzazz-pizzazz.com.